This lesson is on the differences between atoms, ions, and isotopes. We'll also cover some history of how we got to what we think the atom most closely resembles. And I'll also focus on how to take a look at the periodic table and the information that's on it to determine the number of protons, neutrons, and electrons. The first fundamental issue that we want to talk about is the difference between what is an atom and what is an ion. Essentially, an atom is, of course, composed of three particles: the proton, the neutron, and the electron. Protons are the positive part of the atom, neutrons have no charge, and electrons are negatively charged. An atom basically is neutral because it has the same number of protons as electrons. The difference between an atom and an ion is that an ion also has protons, neutrons, and electrons. However, the ion has either gained or lost electrons in that particular process and now has a charge. So the definition of an ion is an atom that has gained or lost electrons. Since electrons are negatively charged, what that means is that if it gains electrons, a gain of electrons, if you're gaining negative things, will make it negative, and if it loses electrons, if it loses negative things, it will leave the positive protons behind and actually become a positive ion. So the only fundamental difference between an atom and an ion is they're both composed of protons, neutrons, and electrons. However, the electrons are actually able to either be gained or lost in different processes, and will create ions depending on whether or not they're gained or lost. Again, this may look backwards. How can it gain something and be negative and lose something and be positive? But remember that the electrons are negative. So if I lose negative, I become positive. The neutrons and protons are located in the nucleus, which in this diagram here is represented by this center portion and darker circle. The electrons are then located in our most modern view at this particular time on these different energy levels, either here or here or here. And we're going to talk in this particular process about how many electrons can be on each one of these circular rings. The definition of an isotope, which is also in your essential facts booklet, is two atoms of the same element that have a different number of neutrons. And what determines what element a substance is the number of protons. So the number of protons is one of the most important things in an atom. Okay? That determines, the number of protons determines what the element actually is. However, neutrons, on the other hand, can be different in an atom. Both of those are composed in the nucleus that's up here. So an oxygen atom may have 8 protons, but it may have 8 neutrons, or it may have 10 neutrons. That provides those two atoms would be considered isotopes because they're still the same element. They're both oxygen atoms, but one of them has a couple more neutrons in it, making that particular atom more massive. So those are the fundamental differences between atoms, ions, and isotopes, three key terms that we need to make sure that you feel comfortable with. Those isotope numbers are what also help define some of the radioactive properties that atoms actually may or may not have if it has too many neutrons in its nucleus.